So yeah, it's most of my work revolves around self-inquiry,
Okay.
a form of inquiry that I molded and kind of adapted over the last 7 years.
Yeah.
That I call ISI, integrated self-inquiry. So
Okay.
it integrates the unconscious. So we'll speak to the body and
Okay.
take cues from the body
Yeah.
to get into the unconscious belief system and dig around and transform the unconscious. But man, that's a central node to a really big picture and worldview that I am passionate about sharing, which ultimately is a consciousness first kind of non-dual understanding of reality that then informs. It's kind of like from physics to geometry to psychology to sociology. I mean, like all the ologies are informed by some of these foundational worldviews that affect your psychology. So you can't just leave these out and think psychology is isolated from physics and all of these. So it's more of a worldview shared body of work that I could just jam on for.
I think that's a perfect place to start. I mean, here we are, right? Like in this beautiful space. And, you know, one of the things that did stick out, you know, when I was doing some research was what you just described, which is that integrated self and really diving into that. So let's start with the worldview. You know, you mentioned non-duality, and you know, here's the interesting take that I have with relation to that, because I was very much on that track and really looking into understanding what is this, right? What, you know, all of it.
What's going on?
Right? What's going on? You know, like physicists are now describing that consciousness is non-local. That means my thoughts are not in my head. Where are they at? You know, what is happening? And one of the things that I have sort of discovered, and maybe we can start here, is it is both singular and dual in a sense, because I am both mortal, right? I am, you know, I still got to pay bills, you know, I still got to go out there and, I don't want to say hustle, that's the wrong term, but you know what I mean? It's like, we still live in that, in a sort of a dual world, and yet from a consciousness perspective, it's all one. So yeah, what's your take on that?
Well, what you're describing is being in the center of a paradox.
Okay.
That's what you're describing.
Okay.
So I have singularity and duality at the same time.
Okay.
And if we think of the physics principle, what is every atom made up? There's 3 components of an atom: proton, neutron, and electron.
Yeah.
A positive, a negative, and a neutral charge. So people go, we live in a duality. We actually live in a trinity. Those are the base physics energies that we're working with.
Yes.
And so when the neutral principle represents the ability to be in between positive and negative energy at the same time, or that which holds both, right?
Yeah.
It's a pointer, you could say, to consciousness as well, because consciousness, we can experience consciousness or being consciousness as separate, being in a dualistic world. Yeah. And that doesn't mean consciousness itself as a mechanical definition is separate from anything, although we can have the experience of separation at the same time. Where that becomes important, because it can all be semantics to the mind.
Yes.
Where that becomes important are the implications. So I'll give an example. If I, for example, feel disconnected in a feeling state, I feel disconnected from nature, then I'll degrade the planet, and I'll drain it of resources, because it has nothing to do with me. And of course, the me that I'm referring to is my personal history, right? My past, that then I'm projecting into a future and going, oh yeah, that's who and what I am. So I have a self-concept. That self-concept is in that moment purely imagined. It's my psychological self that I'm replacing my real self as. Like, okay, I'm my past, I'm my experiences, I'm a collection. And this is where materialism can really back this and go, oh yeah, we're just these evolved monkeys. That's all you are, right? And if I take that on as my identity, I have to feel separate from God.
Yes.
I have to feel separate from nature. I have to feel like a distinct event, which I'm not necessarily not that. But if it becomes a feeling state, that translates in the body as disconnection, separation. And then I have to live my life from that place. In other words, I have to then live my life seeking connection and unity. And so if I'm living from a felt sense of disconnection, which in our society we're taught to repress, right?
Yes.
That can be felt as sadness, guilt, anger, any what we call negative emotion.
Yes.
Stems from that place of separation, right? Because if we think of what is it like to feel united,
Yes.
go, what can I be afraid of if my felt sense is there's nothing outside of me? What can I actually be afraid of if that's my felt sense? There's nothing. I can't even refer to anything.
Yes.
So it just becomes nonsense at that point. Fear requires the separation, right? So if that's where I'm living from, which is 99% of people, because of this identity, that then gets reinforced by materialism and all these other isms, scientism, then I spend my life seeking that which I already am. And that's the paradox. Again, we could be right in the middle of it. I'm seeking love. The moment I stop seeking love, I find what I'm seeking. I'm seeking connection. The moment I stop seeking connection, I find what I'm seeking.
Yes.
And again, so it's like, if I can see, and this is the power of paradox, if I could see that the means I've employed to gain a sense of connection are actually the source of my disconnection, I'll drop it unless I believe there's a payoff.
Say that one more time.
If I remember how I said it. If I drop the means that I've employed to gain connection, if I drop those patterns and that set of beliefs,
yes,
then I'll find connection, right? I'll find that which I was looking for. But I won't let it go unless I still believe there's a payoff. And this is called the mechanism of motivation. It's what determines our motivation. Well, no, I have to keep seeking connection because there is a payoff. I will get it, or if I stop seeking it, I'll be alone, disconnected forever. Whatever those beliefs are that make the seeking make sense, which is really the only way, only reason that the sense of connection evades us.
So in that, you can steer me if I'm on the wrong path here, that in the acceptance of that which we don't want, we inherently receive what we do want.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
100%.
Yeah.
And where this is tricky for people is you only go into their conscious mind and go, well, I want connection. Okay, so I'm going to accept disconnection now.
Yeah.
And if they're only dealing on the conscious level, but actually accepting disconnection means I need to accept and feel all my sadness. I need to accept and feel all this shame.
Yes.
And if that's repressed, then when you check in, okay, consciously, can I accept disconnection? And sadness is repressed. It's actually not in your conscious mind, conscious awareness. So you might be under the illusion, oh yeah, I feel fine. I'm in total acceptance right now. Until something happens and all this shame, sadness, fear, anger comes up and you go, oh, I had no idea that was there.
Yes.
So this is where in the non-dual world, someone could in one moment go, oh yeah, I'm totally in acceptance of what is. Meanwhile, they have all this repression that they're not addressing.
Yeah.
And it's like pseudo-enlightenment. And that's the difference between the journey to God, which is the realization of the non-dual truth. It's like, oh, I'm actually not separate from anything.
Yes.
And that's like kindergarten. That used to be like, that's the highest peak. In our day and age, that's like, everyone knows that. Everyone talks about that. The journey in God is what parts of me are repressed? What am I disassociated from? What am I avoiding that is keeping me from living from that place in every area of my life? Relationship, finances, whatever it may be. So there's an integration process that takes place, and that's our life work.
So that is then the next step, which, I have certain protocols that I use for myself in my background, somatics, and going deep within the self. I personally enjoy breath work as a modality, as a thing. What would you're mentioning like having this sort of separation of like it's like you're not consciously aware, but you're sort of still repressing it. How do you bring it into the awareness? Or is that just going to be naturally what's going to happen for you?
Yeah, so there's two ways. There's involuntary and voluntary, right? So the involuntary way is life is going to bring you situations and circumstances to show you your repression.
Oh, always.
That's it.
Yeah.
And we're really just on a journey of repression to expression, right?
Yeah.
Because in expression, pure expression for its own sake there's a non-dual kind of implication there because you're not avoiding it, but you're also not holding on to it. You're just letting pure energy be seen and expressed, which awareness, like the sun, is already an acceptance of it. We're just catching up. Right?
Yes.
So we're just kind of returning to our nature of, oh, this is allowed to be here.
Yes.
And who knows how it's going to look. I could be screaming, yelling, shaking, or it could just move and I could be perfectly still. I don't know. So there's this degree of surrender, right? Which in every spiritual tradition, what's at the core? Some sense of surrender.
Yeah.
So there's the involuntary way, which life is actually designed to show me that. That's the gift of life. A lot of people think that's the curse of life, right? And then there's the voluntary, which is I could sit here right now and I could test it. So I'll give you an example of a test.
Yeah.
You mind if I test it on you?
Yeah, please.
Okay.
Please.
So if you close your eyes,
Okay,
and you say the statement, there's nothing I'm angry about. Just say that out loud. There is absolutely nothing I'm angry about.
there is nothing I'm angry about.
And just notice what happens in your body.
I feel a sensation in my gut
Mm-hmm.
that goes, oh, I'll find something for you.
Yeah. So that's the unconscious mind going, no,
Okay.
I probably am angry about something,
Okay.
which 9.9 times out of 10, everyone's going to have that.
Yeah.
Whether it's anger, or we could use sadness, we can use any emotion that we historically repressed.
Yeah.
Take a statement that is in the affirmative. These aren't affirmations.
Yes.
They're affirmations intended to evoke our unconscious resistance to them. Right? So it's like, there is nothing I feel ashamed of. I could even access like right in my solar plexus. It's like, okay, yeah, there is still some repressed shame there. And that's a doorway. So then you can choose to go into that and then go through the inquiry process and see what that's all about. But that's an example of, let me voluntarily actually evoke my unconscious.
Yes.
Just through bringing my attention to it, kind of in this reverse way.
Do you feel comfortable bringing me through something?
Absolutely.
Okay, let's try
You
it.
want to do the anger?
We could do anger or shame.
Yeah.
Or,
Okay. Let's try the anger.
Okay.
Try this statement.
Okay.
I can do whatever I want whenever I want.
I can do whatever I want whenever I want.
And what happens in the body?
It's like a mostly. Mostly.
Yeah. So find the part that's not mostly,
Okay.
the little resistance.
Yep.
And what does that feel like? What emotion?
Feels like on my solar plexus, like if I had a visual, it's like a brick wall.
A brick wall.
It's like a red brick
Yeah.
wall, like
Yeah. Red anger.
yeah.
So just try for a moment,
Okay.
saying, I'm not angry. I'm not angry. I'm not, and just see what your body.
I'm not angry. I'm not angry. I'm not angry. I'm not angry. I'm not angry.
Is it fighting that?
I see a flame.
Yeah.
Like
So then go into I'm angry. I'm angry. I'm angry.
I'm angry. I'm angry. I'm angry. I'm angry. And it's like and then there's like a finally.
Yeah.
Right? You're recognizing me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just stay with that. Just stay in the I'm angry, and you could even bring it internal and just let that energy do what it wants to do.
Yeah.
And maybe it changes. Maybe the words change. Just follow the natural rhythm.
So as I'm sitting here, is it that I'm just sitting with my anger?
You're just sitting with it.
Okay.
And you're just watching what it wants to do. Maybe it moves. Maybe it changes into a different emotion. Maybe it transmutes. You're just letting it have space. And you're using this, yeah, I'm angry. I'm angry. I don't need to heal it. I don't need to get rid of it. I don't need to understand it. I'm just acknowledging and giving attention and watching.
Yeah, it's sort of like becoming a ball, a bit of a ball, like on my solar plexus, and it kind of like makes me want to feel like I'm pushing out. Like if I had a sensation, feeling almost like it's turning into a balloon now. Like it's like a hot air balloon. Wants to just sort of like, yeah, I can kind of like, yeah, I kind of feel like that. And just like, yeah, it makes me want to cry a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just
beautiful.
stay with that. Stay with it.
Yeah.
And just affirm that. It makes me want to cry. This makes me want to cry.
Yeah, it makes me want to cry. It makes me want to like, you know.
And what's there is I'm sad. And give that I'm sad.
Yeah,
I'm sad.
I'm sad.
Good work.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's happening now?
This little piece of me, this little boy, almost like all these people are gonna look at you.
Yeah. Maybe a little embarrassment.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just same thing. I'm embarrassed. I'm ashamed.
Embarrassed. Ashamed of that sadness, right?
Yeah. And it's like you and the rest of the world would have the same thought.
Yeah.
It's not your thought. This is ancient.
Yeah.
These are hundreds of thousands of years old.
Yeah.
These thoughts. So we're just bringing them into awareness. They're just allowed. And now what's happening?
Yeah, just like a release, like a softening, just like an okayness, like everything's okay. It's fine. It's totally good.
Yeah.
It's beautiful, man.
Yeah, man.
It's beautiful.
So
Thank
just courageous for just going there.
Yeah.
I want to acknowledge that.
Yeah, thank you.
And I'll say too, 9 out of 10 times is all that's needed.
Yeah.
Now there are moments, maybe images come up from past and future.
Yeah.
And thoughts
Yeah.
that are coming in to prove. And that's when we can bring more
Yeah.
of the mind in and kind of what's sticky? What's sticking to this sensation? Oh, this one memory.
Yes.
And I might have a belief that says, because this happened, I'm wrong, bad, I'm not enough, whatever the belief is.
Yeah.
And I would call what you just did, I usually don't use these terms, but I'll just do it for sense making. It's like that's kind of the feminine path. It's like, let me go complete, and it's also the tantric path. It's let me go completely towards the emotion.
Yes.
And until I'm completely devoured by it. It's like bringing it so close to you.
Yes.
That eventually it's so close you can't see it anymore.
Yeah.
Like you would with your finger.
Yeah.
And that's emotional transmutation. Now, in that process, there might be a lingering memory or your mind revolting and going, no, this is the proof. That's where we take that deeper into inquiry. And that's when we go into finding the proof that maybe our ego has given us for so long that proves that belief right. And we start to see that the proof doesn't make sense when it's in the light, when it's resisted and we're in assumption.
Yes.
And there's even a subtle level of resistance, whether it's an emotional or mental resistance, it survives solely off of that. So just the speaking in, okay, here's the belief. The question, is it true? The attempt to find the evidence. And for yourself, having your own revelation, not taking my words for it.
Right.
Having your own revelation of, wait, this actually can't stand on anything.
Yeah.
And there's no sense to it. It would be like if I said to you, can you know with conviction that you're actually a butterfly, you're not a human?
Right.
You couldn't stand there and be like, I am. You couldn't. Right? We can't hold on to things that don't make sense. So, and the Achilles heel of all negative beliefs is they can't make sense by their nature. They have to depend on illusion and on fallacy. The same way a negative, a neutron.
Yes.
Or am I thinking of an electron? Electron.
Electrons on the outside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is in a cloud.
Yes.
Right? And a cloud of probability.
Mm-hmm.
It's elusive by nature. It's the negative charge.
Yes.
It's physics.
Yeah.
These are thinking, right?
Yes.
It follows the same pattern. It has to keep you in some cloud of judgment, denial, rejection, projection, avoidance, justification. There's actually a finite list of all of the ways that it sustains itself.
Yeah.
So what we're doing is we're bringing emotion into the light. I'm not doing the healing. You're not doing the healing. The light, God, grace is doing the healing. Same thing, consciousness.
Yeah.
Same thing we're doing with the belief. Okay, let me bring this to light and voice this logic that I was believing that I couldn't see, that at some point I just accepted.
Yes.
And now that I'm bringing it to my conscious mind, just that act is the first and last step. It's not like now I need to go home and affirm it 1,000,000 times.
Yes.
Because if I truly believe it, I will act like I believe it. I will have to make new choices in my life. If I don't make new choices, I don't believe it yet.
Yes. You know what's really interesting? I set up it just sort of came into my head one day that I was like, it's like, we're ultimately looking for safety in the vessel. And I created this formula called the SAFE formula. And it was see the, it's like see it, right? Like you got to become aware of it, acknowledge it, much like we just did. Feel, which is like, it's like a softening and a surrendering, and then express, like allow it. Of
course you created that. You just did that.
I know, I just did it, right? Yeah. And it was, in my own inquiry, I sort of just almost stumbled on it because I'm a personal, I like formulas and algorithms, or like there's a term for it, but you know what I'm talking about, I was like, that works really good. And it feels like very similar in this sense, right? It's like, that's exactly what we're doing, which is simply just like allowing the experience to be. And, as you're working with somebody, will you have people do that on their own, or will you guide them through it? Like, what's the easier way?
Both. I'll guide them because the beliefs system can be super tricky.
Yeah.
You know, the way we justify things, the way we kind of deny and avoid, it's so tricky.
Yeah.
Often it's you can just get in loops when you're starting to do this work alone. If you don't have a mirror to actually see what you're doing, it's like the phrase, you can't see the picture when you're inside of the frame.
Yes.
So it's very useful to have someone there, but ultimately your body and ways of testing your body is what you want to learn to trust over time.
Yeah.
So it's like, if I say to myself, like, yeah, I'm free and there's resistance, then I know I'm in my body. I know I'm not.
Yeah.
I don't need to go to a coach and be like, can you help me determine if I'm free or not, or what my issue is? It's like, can I learn a series of ways of self-diagnosing and expressing emotion? That anyone can learn that.
Yes.
It's when we start to feel like we need negative beliefs, because that's actually keeping us from deeper places, more deeply held and scarier beliefs.
Yeah.
We'll hold on to things like, no, I'm not enough and I was abandoned and I need that.
Yes.
And so all the logic, all the feeling in the world isn't going to get them to let that go if letting it go equals more pain.
Yes.
Because that's how we operate. We'll hold on to what we believe is going to help us avoid pain.
Yes.
And we'll move in the direction of what we feel is going to bring us pleasure or what's in our best interest. So if letting go of something that doesn't serve you, for some reason in your perception, will lead to something dangerous or more scary than holding on to it, you'll hold on to it for dear life.
Yes. Yeah, and that happens with everybody.
Yeah.
It's the opportunity for ego death is there.
Absolutely.
And, I was recently doing some work on a emotional mastery course that I'm writing, and that's sort of like, what I got to the end of it, I was like, oh yeah, that's exactly what we're doing. It's like we get to the end of that identity, and there's like all these patterns and beliefs. And so I really enjoyed your approach because it's so gentle. It's like in a felt sense, there is like, it's like both the diagnosis and the treatment are one and the same.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And that's a beautiful space. What led you into this like direction?
Yeah. So, 2000, I think 15 to 16, I left a network marketing company. Okay. So a quick history. In high school, my freshman year, my older brother is 8 years older. Yeah. He came to me and he showed me a documentary called Zeitgeist. You familiar with that documentary? It's like one of the OG kind of red pill documentaries. Okay. Truth about 9/11, the banking system.
Oh, yeah. It was on
religion.
Netflix for a while.
Yeah. It's all the big four.
Yeah.
And I was extremely angry, specifically around 9/11. I saw people jumping out of windows and had the thought, what if that was my parents and my own government did this? And they're telling me that it didn't happen in their life. Like, I was furious.
Yes.
I started a club called the Brotherhood, but it was in Gaelic. It was like it was the Broth Reaches. That's how you say it. And we would just meet up and watch documentaries and try to figure out how to change the world. And at the time, my solution, being a kid that didn't know how to express his anger and didn't come from a family that taught how to embrace our emotions, it was we should just blow up the White House. Like that was my solution. I was just so angry, and so with that seed planted, there was always something in the back of my mind. There's got to be more to this. Most of what we learned was a lie. And that seed was planted in freshman year. So very quickly I was like, school, they want me to be a factory worker. Like, they just want me to fall in line. Yes. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do what I need to pass and play the game. And then I'm going to go figure something out. Yeah. That led me to network marketing. And about 4 years into network marketing, my heart just wasn't in it anymore. But I fell in love with it because it was centered around personal development, spirituality, almost like this energy of like revolution, rebellion, and that's like was my vibe at the time. Yeah. Long story short, when I walked away from that, I had no idea what I was going to do. It was very similar to the Surrender Experiment book, where I was like, I don't know what's next, but I'm just going to follow my highest excitement. In every moment, I'm going to let everything else self-organize. Yeah. A couple months into that, my car gets repossessed. I'm getting, bill collectors. I'm eating cans of beans.
The great unravel, I like to call that.
Yeah. And it was just a trust fall, and at the time, like previous to that, it was like I was partying, smoking, drinking, having sex all the time with, whatever. I just was in that phase, and it hit me. I was at a point where I was like, I was sucking my soul.
Yes.
And so I just had to do what I came was, I'm just going to do the opposite of everything that I was doing. So I dedicated myself to this path of, okay, I'm going to give it to God and follow my highest excitement, even if there's no plan on how I'm going to make any money. Yeah. And about 2 months in, I had this inspiration, start a newsletter and just share with everyone what you're doing, what you're learning, what you've learned over the years and whatnot. And I sent an email out, first email, and it landed in the inbox of this woman moments before she was going to kill herself. And she was in Australia, and she was a renowned medium in her 60s. Yeah. And she's sitting in her car at the beach with a handful of sleeping pills. Yeah. And her guides come in and say, hey, before you take those sleeping pills, turn the radio on. And she goes, okay, turns the radio on. She was going to take them and then go into the ocean and drown. Yeah. And she turns the radio on, and it says word for word, you should stay a little bit longer. And she starts crying, and then she puts the pills down. Yeah. And then she gets my email, and my email was titled, I'm excited to die. And I was referring to ego death, of course. Yes. And she reads it and goes, I really want you to coach me. She responds, first response I've ever gotten from a newsletter. Okay. I want you to coach me. And I go, what's a coach?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I knew of Tony Robbins and these people, and like Deepak Chopra and all these other influences, but I never considered myself that coach. I said, how about we get on a call and I'll just share and support you. Yeah. I had no idea she was suicidal. Yeah. And had been multiple times in her life. Yeah. And I got on this call, and really I just had beginner's mind. I remember this phrase. It was like, ignorance on fire is better than knowledge on ice. Yeah. I had no idea what I was doing, but I was just fired up. I just wanted to share what has helped me, because I felt free just from saying, you know what, I'm just going to do what I want to do when I want to do it. Take my car. Cool. Cool. I'm going to keep, I was beyond the point of no return. So there was this freedom that I was really feeling for the first time in my life. Yeah. And we got on this call, and she had this massive emotional release. I had emotional release. She starts, getting back into her body, and all of her gifts start coming online. And then she's going, you have this guide and that guide. And she starts teaching me. And we have this exchange where it's like, I'm helping her heal and transform trauma, and she's helping me with like my spiritual gifts and all these esoteric experiences. And she goes, how much do you cost? And my bills are $800 a month, so just cover my bills and we'll make this happen. And I did that for like 3 or 4 months, and it completely changed my life. It changed her life. She lost a bunch of weight. She reconciled this relationship with her dad, who used to abuse her, and just very meaningful change in her life. And one day it all kind of hit me, and I was like, man, this is why this is the work I'm supposed to do. Yeah. And
that's like,
yeah, I was like, I felt called into
so
it.
Fucking fired up when I hear that.
Yeah, hell yeah. And it was literally a week after I had that moment. I was like, I need a mentor, because this is great, but really I don't know much about anything. Yeah. And a friend sent me an article. It's top 30 entrepreneurs, like philanthropist entrepreneurs under 30. And he's like, I felt that you should read this. And I go through and I read about this guy, Javon Langford, who's a well-known men's coach. And I just resonated with him so much. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to reach out to this guy. And I found him on Facebook, and I reached out to him. I said, let's get on a phone call. We got on a phone call, and it was just one of those soul colliding conversations where it was like, we're meant to do some work together. We're both in tears. I hear his story. I share my story. And I spent my last $300 to go sleep on his couch and learn everything I could possibly learn in exchange for doing whatever he needed in his business. And he put me through his workshops and through the ringer, and he coached me, and then he took me to Europe and took me through workshops and like threw me in. It was like, coach them. Oh my God, And it was kind of like, it was mentorship, but what's the word? I'm like, kind of like a, like a plumber at a plumber's union. You go like a journeyman, a journeyman, like an apprenticeship. Yeah, it's like that for maybe 2 years. And that I got to a point where I was like, okay, I see what I resonate with, and then I have my disagreements or just my own insight, and I'm ready to put myself out there, and then that started a chain of, I think went on to do, me and my team and me as an individual, like 15 different retreats in different parts of the world, and just creating curriculums and online communities around this work.
Yeah. Yeah. So like maybe walk me through like what a retreat looks like. You know?
Man, I'll tell you this one, we did this one in Bali, friend of mine, Nathaniel Salas, great. If he's not in Austin right now, but he's usually in Austin. You should have him on the podcast.
Yeah, please.
We're in Bali. I'll give you this example of how we started this one.
Yeah.
We hid in the garage, and everyone shows up.
Yeah.
And there's a computer open. It says play me, and they press play, and it gives them instruction. And we're watching them. They don't know we're watching them, so we could see them. And it gives them an exercise just to share vulnerably with each other and like pull a card. And we just have all these exercises for them to do. And we're essentially like, you don't need us. And we wanted to see how they would react. Yeah. And we're just watching, and within 20, 30 minutes, they're in tears, they're hugging. I mean, it was incredible. And then we come back in, and, you know, some of them were a little triggered, some weren't, and we processed that and had moments of inquiry and whatnot. But a lot of what we do at retreats is we create situations like that, or games or experiences to evoke that emotion, to evoke the unconscious. Yeah. So we might play a game, and we're like, elect a leader, and one person raises their hand, another person goes like this. And right in that moment, we stop everything. What was that? And it's like, well, I kind of wanted to, but I didn't, because I didn't want to overstep that person. Yeah. That's how they're living every part of their life. Yes. So we create the game, but the game of the game is how you're playing the game. And so it's like, all I do, it's like I come so alive because I'm required to come alive in that place, in that space, because of the presence that's required to notice what's happening and how people are engaging, because that's who they are in their relationship and their business, all of it. So it's just like a constant reflection of your deepest held beliefs and operating system that then creates a safe space where you can then let that emotion out, instead of what you do in your life where you just kind of held that in and you continue to repress. Yes. Everything stops, that gets processed, and then you decide, do I want to lead or not? And that's a new pattern. And for 4 or 5 days, you're doing that until it becomes an actual pattern that we can witness in the container. Yes. And that might even mean go call someone and have the actual conversation now while you're here. Pitch the offer. It has to result in new choices, or there has been no change. Yes. So we'll actually look for that in the container. And I feel like that's what sets us apart, because a lot of us, like a lot of people do a lot of the inner work, you have the release, but where's the measurement?
That was my next question, which is literally that, which is like in the integration space, right? So like when you have gone through, so I just like felt released, and I felt, like totally just, and like I've been doing this work for a long time, and I kind of know what to do. It's like, there's always this moment when I go through a process, whether even if it's a meditation or whatever, and then it's like I don't want to say it's a now what, but it's kind of like a now what, it's like all right, just back to the old, and it's, so maybe, like kind of walk me through what that looks like.
So there's 2 places you can go with the now what. Number one is, what was the opposite of the pattern that provoked this emotion in the first place? Yeah. So if it was the hesitancy, then the next time you have the opportunity, it's to not be hesitant, or it's to notice that and make a new choice. Yeah. So the pattern, the opposite of the pattern is always what you want to do, but you feel like for some reason you can't because of fear. Yes. So number one, what is opposing the pattern? Choose that as soon as possible. Number 2, if that's not clear on what the opposite is, then you can just go back to, what's my highest excitement, passion, and joy that I want to follow? Because it's guaranteed that the more you step in that direction, the more lifetimes of resistance to that, because that really is freedom. Yes. It's authenticity. Yes. And authenticity ranks higher than love and wholeness on the scale of consciousness measured with kinesiology. So it's like, authenticity is, I'm being who I am in the world. What does that look like? I say yes to my excitement, joy, and passion, regardless of the circumstance, people's opinions, whatever it may be. Yeah. People call it leadership. It's authenticity. So no matter what, the safe check is like, well, I don't know exactly what that's going to look like. Okay, are there actions in the direction of your true passion and excitement? Not because some people can say, well, I'm really excited to go eat a bunch of chocolate and just Netflix out for 3 days. Yeah. But what they're really saying is, I'm avoiding anxiety. Yes. And I'm more excited to do that than face it. So it's pseudo excitement. Excitement, passion, inspiration is done for its own sake. It's not done for outcomes or results. Yes. It doesn't need to be justified. Yes. So when you really understand what that is, then, and you act towards it, either resistance will come up, which is by design. That's a good thing. It's like, this is a natural process of evoking what's in the way of my passion. Yeah. So it will shine a light on your unconscious, or you'll do it and what you just resolved, there will be no resistance.
Yeah.
And you'll get to go further into that genuine inspiration, passion, and joy, which ignites synchronicity, which is the self-organizing principle of reality, the same thing that organizes trees and forests. Why does everything have what it needs in the moment it needs it to be what it is? You know, to be what a tree is, to be, a bush never tries to be anything besides a bush.
Yes.
And it's perfectly supported in being that. And there's some organizing force that's allowing it to have energy and expand and grow, right?
Yeah.
It's synchronicity.
Yeah.
Synchronicity is always on. It's always working, the self-organizing force. The question is it organizing in a negative-oriented way or a positive-oriented way? And all the difference, we could also say, instead of negative and positive, we could say in a disintegrated way, which is like I'm in repression and resistance.
Yeah.
So I'm going to synchronize more events around repression and resistance.
Yes.
Or in an integrative way, inclusive way,
Yeah.
which means by definition, that energy must include what I need when I need it.
Yes.
Perfect timing, abundant, all the things that are germane
Yeah.
to the energy of acceptance, joy, and passion. I must magnetize more of that
Yeah.
because it's simply what I am being.
Yes. That is incredible, man. I love that. Gets me fired up even just thinking about it. One of the, kind of in a similar vein, we have a set of standards at our event. I have a 3-day event that I run men through, and it's sort of a combination of, I have a military background, I'm a veteran, and
Okay.
still have a very deep sense of somatics and the psyche and understanding, like true mental emotional well-being. And so one of the things I have the guys do is that they need to set a standard for themselves. And if they don't line up to their own standard, which they invariably they always won't, because it's like, it's kind of like that same thing of like the leader, like, I want to be a leader. It's like, wait, what's that? Then we call them forward, and there's always that moment of like calling them up, and I have found that in you're mentioning your group, it's like when you're in a safe space of individuals that are ready, they're willing to open up, it's like instantaneously healing.
Oh yeah.
It's so incredible.
Yeah. Especially in a field like that.
Yeah.
Where everyone is there, they know it's safe, it's loving.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
It's
it's beautiful. So what, you're mentioning excitement and passion. What is your excitement and passion? Where is that taking you?
Well, yeah, previous to this conversation, it was to come have this conversation.
It's beautiful.
It was genuinely my highest excitement.
Yeah.
Out of all my options, I was like, I'm here. And that's why I'm here.
It's awesome.
I'm really excited about German New Medicine.
Say that again.
German New Medicine.
German New Medicine. Okay.
GNM for short. That's been something that's been a little more recent.
Okay. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So it's basically the science of how the psyche affects the body.
Okay.
And this guy, Dr. Hammer, did 10,000 interviews and brain scans. This is in, I don't remember the exact years, maybe the 70s or 80s or something. I think it's only been around for maybe like 50 years.
Yeah.
But long story short, he lost his son. And 7 months later, in like a sudden tragic accident, and 7 months later developed testicular cancer. And as a doctor, he goes, there must be a correlation. I'm going to have my brain scan, see what's happening, right? Because maybe the part of my brain that controls what's happening in my testicles has been affected.
Yeah.
And he just had this intuition. So he gets his brain scanned and he sees there's been this imprint right on the part of the brain stem that controls reproduction, digestion, our lungs, but specifically the part that controls reproduction. And he noticed, okay, as soon as, my son died, I had the fear of never having a son again. And he named that this like a reproduction conflict, the fear of never being able to reproduce.
Yeah.
And then you can also notice this in animals as well. So what happens, your body interprets reality, goes, you're not safe if you can't reproduce. That's the purpose of our biology.
Yes.
So something's happening. So what do? Turn on a special program. And this is one of the 5 biological laws of GNM, is that what we call dis-ease is actually a specialized biological program that's here to just help us adapt. It's not, there's no hardware that's just failing. Our body's not attacking itself. No cells are just randomly out of control. And what I love about this is everything I talked about with synchronicity and natural law, being ourself, all of this checks out.
Mm.
And that's when I start to see that, like this is based on natural law that you could see in the body, outside of the body, in your direct experience. It's game over for me. I obsess, right?
Yeah.
So he followed the science, like the whole biological chain. Okay, when this is impacted, what happens? It tells the testicles to increase cell proliferation, make more cells. Why? To make more sperm.
Yeah.
I can't have a kid. How is my body going to help me? Make more sperm to increase the odds of having a kid. Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So as long as that conflict is active, and what he found is there's 2 phases of disease, where in modern medicine, they think that those are different disease types. They call them cold diseases versus hot diseases.
Okay.
Hot diseases are things like inflammation. I don't remember the category of cold diseases, but a whole different category they put in this. They say they're cold or hot. What he realized is that's actually 2 sides of the same coin. So the cold phase is when you're in fight or flight.
Yeah.
And your hands go cold, you're not hungry, you're not sleeping well. Maybe you're waking up at 3 a.m. all the time. Why? Because your body's going, you're in danger. There's a conflict in your psyche, and you need to wake up and solve that so you can have deep rest. Mm-hmm. So most people you could spend years in what's called, say this right, it's a tricky word. It's like simpaticotonia, something like that.
Okay.
The parasympathetic tone of your vagus nerve. You could spend years there.
Yes.
Especially if it's continuing to be re-triggered. And
Yeah.
so the longer and the more intense this conflict active phase is, which is that cold phase, that fight or flight phase, determines how intense and how long your healing phase, the warm phase, or the vagatonial phase, the phase where you need rest, which often gets misdiagnosed as chronic fatigue. But it's actually this deep rest phase that follows some conflict resolution that now your body needs to orient, go out of fight or flight and into deep rest.
Yeah.
And when that becomes, if you scale that out to cancer, like in his case, all of us, so let me back up a little bit.
Yeah.
When he resolved the conflict, when he realized what was happening, and he worked through, and on an first on an inside, inner plane, and then on an outside perspective, he goes, I need to release the fear of not reproducing, do that work psycho-emotionally, spiritually. And then what's the physical resolution? Well, if he really wants to have a kid, go have a kid. Yeah. Like in GNM, the solutions are very practical. So I don't know if he later in life did have a kid, but I know he resolved the conflict. And when he resolved the conflict, because you don't have to do the second part, that's just...
Which is the action.
Yeah, which is the action.
Yeah.
You need to resolve the conflict in your psyche. So when he did that, the body goes, okay, we don't need this program anymore. So all those extra cells, if we don't need them, the body doesn't do anything, doesn't keep around anything it doesn't need, because it just requires extra energy. So it goes, send water and blood, aka inflammation, to this site, because that's the carrier of bacteria and fungi, which break down cells. In nature, when a tree falls over, how does it decompose? Bacteria and fungi. Yeah. So same thing. It goes to eats those cells up, and then you might get what's called an infection. But it's not an infection. In the West, they go, it's an infection, throw antibiotics at it.
Interesting.
So these microbes are needed to eat up all these cells, and then you might have pus, or you might have discharge, you might have all this stuff. And Western medicine goes, that's a disease. We have to stop those symptoms, when in reality, those symptoms are the cure to a previous imbalance. Yeah. And this is with every disease. And then when you really go deep, you start to see, oh my God, people are dying from cancer because of the treatments of cancer, the fear, and how much energy that drains out of their system, literally ATP energy. Yes. And then this whole constellation of other fear-based conflicts, which the CDC has even acknowledged. One of the number one comorbidities with COVID was anxiety. Yeah. So you have this whole paradigm now with GNM that's like, oh no, actually, instead of using antibiotics, actually help the body do what it's doing. Give it more microbes. Don't kill your gut bacteria. If anything, like have more and healthier gut bacteria, because the bacteria is intelligent. It's there for a reason. Yes. Right. And what happens over time is then all of those cells get discharged and they leave the body, and then you're left stronger than you were before. The testicles or wherever, it's actually reinforced and they function better. And so what doesn't kill you makes you stronger is a
Yeah.
real biological law.
Yeah.
That when you go through and you transmute and you transform and you learn and heal, your body actually gets stronger, it gets reinforced. And when you solve a conflict, you can't repeat the same conflict when you genuinely resolve it, because a true resolution means there's something in you that goes, oh, I could never see that the same way I saw it then.
There is, so for context, my wife has been working through Lyme's disease for about a year now. And one of the treatment protocols is heavy doses of antibiotics, like heavy doses. Like we're talking like Dapsone, which is like a high level antibiotic. And then you, like one of the big Lyme doctors is like, but we double it. So in order to, kill the infection and co-infections, and there's 20 co-infections with Lyme's disease. So I'm becoming more aware of Lyme's disease and how it's, affects the nervous system. And on top of that, our last year, and this is just our own personal healing journey. And, my wife and I, like we're going through it. We find out that there's toxic mold in our house, which is again, a fungus. And so Stachybotrys is toxic black mold. And it was in 3 different parts of our house. And we didn't recognize it until it literally got so bad that it cracked the wall. And then it like started like literally seeping spores. And then
you got it tested.
Yeah, we got it tested. And then, we had like every test under the sun. We got, you name it. We figured out exactly what, how many spores and all these things. And so we had numbers. So of the, the 30, strains of mold, we had 5 of them are toxic. We had 3 of the 5 were very high levels in our house. And so basically what happened, it also got underneath our air conditioner. So that was pulling, mold up and just dispersing mold spores everywhere. And so anyway, long story short, one of the things that I'm finding with treating and long-term treatment is that it's very difficult, especially in chronic disease, to heal it. And, I have a lot of different protocols that I, personally use when I'll do fasting, I'll do cleanses and all these things. It's such an interesting thing, this new German medicine or German new medicine.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, German new medicine. Because I've never heard of this, which is really fun because I understand what you're describing as part of the holistic nature of life. Right? It's like,
Well, let me ask you a question.
Yeah, please.
Did you have mycotoxins in your blood?
I currently do, yeah.
You do, now?
Yeah, and here's the thing. We moved out. We moved to a different house. It was great, but then we were too far away from the schools for our kids. So we moved into a new rental, and we just discovered mold. I instantly knew it, like within the first 24 hours of us being there.
Different strands or just one?
Different strand.
And it's like in the red?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Same with your wife?
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, correct.
Did you have all the same? Was it almost identical or the blood work?
The strains are you talking about?
Yeah, the strains and the amounts between you and your wife.
Different. I did not personally get tested, but I just know that I have mycotoxins inside me.
Might want to get tested. And the reason I ask is this. I had mold as well.
Yeah.
My partner at the time never got it. Now this there was a wrench in everything. How can we be in the same exact environment?
Interesting.
For months?
Yeah.
And I have mycotoxins and she doesn't have mycotoxins.
Interesting.
There's no answer to that.
Yeah.
The answer is speculation. Oh, well, maybe you just breathed it more. Maybe your immune system's compromised or whatever. Now, I'm not a medical professional. This is not medical advice.
Yeah.
But what I will say, according to German new medicine, is that fungus and bacteria, they're the oldest organisms on the planet.
Yeah.
Like the bacteria in our gut is ancient.
Yeah.
And when we have cell proliferation, which happens anytime we're in fight or flight for a sustained period of time, more commonly when we have what's called a DHS, which is like an actual shocking event, like an overwhelming shock experience. They call it a DHS in German new medicine. Yeah. Dirk's Hammer syndrome, I think they call it. And so let's say it's about breathing. My lungs. So if it's called I think it's a death, fright, scare, conflict. If I were to suffocate someone, their body, the part of their brain that's responsible for them to survive, which is their brainstem, goes, we're not getting air. Now, how do we adapt? Make more cells in the lungs. And right away, it will start doing that.
Interesting.
So then those cells can absorb more oxygen because you're not getting a lot of air.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden you start getting suffocated, that biological problem turns off. You might get a little mucus. You might not even notice the mucus because it was so quick, and maybe it wasn't that, if it wasn't that intense, you might not even notice that you just had a conflict and then a conflict resolution and then a little healing phase. We're constantly doing that, right?
Yes.
So that's how it gets enacted physically. Same if I were to eat a rock and I couldn't pass it, my body would go, oh, that's an indigestible morsel. So turn on cramps to move it through and increase cells to create more acids and digestive juices to dissolve that.
Yeah.
So that's the physical stimulus. Our brain doesn't know the difference between the physical or the non-physical stimulus. So if I experience something I can't digest, and those two words, I can't accept this, I can't let this go. A betrayal, usually associated with anger, is morsel conflicts. I can't let this go. I'm ruminating, whatever it is. I will hit the same part of the brain that turns that rock indigestible morsel response on, will turn on from my psycho-emotional experience.
Yeah.
So same thing if in the, with COVID, for example, I can't breathe. I'm afraid of breathing.
Yeah.
It's going to go, okay, turn cell proliferation on in the lungs, make sure they get enough oxygen. And then when you come out of that conflict, oh, this isn't so bad, I'm okay, then you get all the symptoms. What are the symptoms? Congestion in the lungs.
Yeah.
Because we don't need those cells anymore. Boom, send congestion to the lungs. Make it like you'll send the bacteria. And if you don't have the bacteria, then those kind of tumors, the cell proliferation, which we call tumors, will just encapsulate and become benign. So in the case of your wife with Lyme, if she's killing the bacteria, and this is speculation.
Yeah. No, I'm all ears.
It's like, what else breaks down cells? Fungi. The fungi in the body will break down cells.
Yes.
They will break down just like bacteria. They will eat cells and poop it out.
Yeah.
And same thing, like if you have strep throat, what actually, when you get the symptoms of strep throat, people go, oh, you have all this bacteria in your throat, kill the bacteria. Well, why is the bacteria there? It's eating up all the dead cells. It's actually doing you a service. It's healing you. So when you kill the bacteria that's doing its job, same with the fungus, it's all in one category.
Yeah.
Which would explain when I was in the apartment and I got the mold, I was in a healing phase where I needed bacteria and fungi. She wasn't in a healing phase, and therefore either her body spit out that fungus right away, those mycotoxins, or for some reason, I don't know what it is, maybe bioresonance, I don't know, it just didn't enter her system.
Interesting. That's there, and the reason I say interesting is I did not get sick, with
there you go.
with originally, and so Jenny's getting sick and she's like trying to figure out what's going on, and I'm like, I'm feeling pretty good, and it was as if I like started to, once they started to remediate it, I started getting sick, and I started feeling like, okay, now I'm in this environment, is this safe, right? It's almost like in a way psychosomatic, and then we moved into this new rental and I started noticing it, but I have a certain protocol every single morning. I do breath work, I do mobility, I do, I'm like, all right, I'm going to use this as an opportunity to grow stronger. And I do that. And so like, I kind of met it with this warrior mentality. And since then, the symptoms have greatly reduced for me. And I know Jenny is still being affected by it, but it was very interesting. We were literally having this conversation today because I'm still in the same environment. We literally had a camera go up what's called the plenum inside the air ducts and kind of take a picture, and sure enough, it's got a bunch of mold all over this fiberglass. And so we're working with our landlord to try to fix this. But the long story short is I'm still in the same environment, but I don't experience the same symptoms as I did a couple months ago.
Modern science can't explain that. You have a stronger immune system. Even the concept of immunity from the GNM perspective is flawed because it says immunity is fighting off bad organisms. Now, it doesn't mean if I drink a bunch of toxic water, my body doesn't have a detox response. It does, but that's very acute. I'm either going to puke or have diarrhea right away.
Yes.
So we could say that's the immune system, but the immune system isn't fighting anything. It's just helping something exit the body. Yeah. Right. What I want to ask you is, has your wife had night sweats?
I know she's been waking up at night.
Okay.
And early on, and I was noticing that same thing, like wake up at 3 a.m. kind of thing.
Yep.
Early on, I was doing that as well. I don't know about night sweats, but we do have a sauna, and so she'll naturally do sauna every single day.
The reason I ask is because when you started to feel like, oh man, I'm not safe in this territory, and it's the mold, and and she's experiencing that.
Yeah.
In GNM, they'd call that a territorial anger conflict. And in territory anger, what your kidneys do is they say, we need more water because we might lose our territory and be in survival mode, and we don't want to dehydrate. So I'm going to retain more water, so there could be weight gain. But it's not physical, it's not fat, it's water weight.
Yeah.
And then when you resolve the conflict, my environment's safe, I'm in home, I don't need to worry about being out on my own and abandoned.
Yeah.
Then you release all that water, typically with night sweats. So I was just checking, because those symptoms, it's your kidneys. And when you go into the healing stage, there's going to be a lot of fatigue and brain fog.
Yeah.
And a lot of people go, I have mold because I have fatigue and brain fog, but that's inflammation going to certain parts of the body that requires a lot of energy. And that part of the brain that was damaged during the conflict, you're sending inflammation to that part of the brain to heal and scar up that area. So on purpose, it's going, no, you don't need to be sharp right now. We need to heal. Yeah. And most people are fighting the healing stage and take it back to inquiry because how much we identify with things like achievement, doing, being energized, being active.
Yeah.
That's the hardest part for people, is my identity is being challenged.
Yeah. I definitely felt that going into this. Yeah.
It was a complete loss of who I was. I had to take off work for 6 months. I blew through my savings. I mean, it was one of the hardest times of my life.
Yeah.
And what was so hard was believing it was mold. Wow. That was the hardest part.
Yeah.
Not because of the mold specifically, but because of that whole paradigm in of itself.
Yes.
Because it doesn't even changing the paradigm doesn't negate the implication of, oh yeah, I should live in a healthy environment. I still do all of those things.
Yeah.
I just don't believe there's this boogeyman that is the cause of what I'm experiencing, and that somehow I just can't fight it off. I believe, no, that's happening for a reason that's actually here to benefit me, and I'm going to facilitate it and work through the thing that I can control, which is my mind, what I believe about it, and my habits.
Yeah, you and I, very similar on that wavelength. And we moved into this home 2 months ago because we wanted to be closer to the kids' school. And we knew, like, all right, this is where we're going to be for the next 6 months, because we are still renovating our house. Again, when there was mold, we were like, well, we got to clear it out anyway. Might as well just go for it. And so we just gutted the whole house. So we're just building a second story. It was like a whole thing. And, stepping in, I had that same mindset. I was like, it got to me I let it get to me for like 2-3 days. I was a shithead. I will tell you. I was like, and I was like, wait, this is not who I am. I'm not this man. I know who I am, and I know that I can show up as a better individual and be that which I'm claiming to be with this unbreakable man thing. Right? It's like, all right, what is the opportunity here? Can I improve on my mindset, my habits, and these things?
Absolutely.
And with your experience, did you end up moving out? Like, what was the resolve?
I got it cleaned.
Okay.
And then I stayed.
Yeah. What through that conflict was the benefit, right? So like, I always find that in every conflict and every, that which we call bad, there's always opportunity. Yeah. What for you came through in that experience?
Yeah. I mean, to me, it revealed where I was still basing my value and self-worth off of being someone. Yeah. So it's like, I'm the one with answers. I'm the one that's smart. Yeah. I'm the one that's sharp. I'm the one that's energized. Yeah. I'm the one that's the life of the party. Yeah. I'm consistent. I deliver results. It's like all of these things that I've sourced value from. Yes. I was forced to let go of because I had insomnia as well for like 4 or 5 months. I was getting 3 hours of sleep a night. So between that and the brain fog, I mean, a lot happened to that. Initiated from that previous relationship. Yeah. PTSD. I mean, it was really intense. Yeah. So I was in this healing stage that was so intense because the degree of intensity of that relationship and what it brought up for 6 to 8 months was so intense and pretty sustained that the healing phase, which again, I was like, oh, this is mold. That healing phase was so, it just knocked me out.
Yeah.
So I was in a sense forced to sit down and then question, man, who would I be without any of this? You know, who would I be without the business? Who am I without friendships looking a certain way? Who am I without this amount of money? And it's like I had to question the beliefs that say I need those things to be valuable.
Yeah.
And so it just was another, because consciously you could ask me, do you need those things? No, of course not.
Yeah.
But then you lose them.
Yeah.
And how your body reacts is telling you what you actually believe. So it was this humbling process of I still believe that I need those things to be loved and to fit in, to be wanted.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, man, like kind of, I'm thinking about also my own personal experience, you know, as I grow and do these things, it's like, there is this, you know, every time I sit and meditate, and I personally like to sit, there's an indigenous tobacco called hape.
Very familiar.
Yeah, I'll sometimes sit in hape, and I get the same, like, it's like the same lesson, you know, you're like, all right, just let me read that book, that same page in that book again, which is, you're already it. Like, you're it. Like, stop running around looking for it. You're it. And I'm like, yeah, I know, I'm it. You know, it's like, I'm like centered. I know who the fuck I am. I am, you know, just like, absolutely. And then you kind of like wake up and you're like, well, it would be cool, really cool though, if I like, you know, made this amount of money and, you know, had this kind of body. And so how do you, you know, for you personally, how do you balance that? Or if, you know, you can, and you're welcome to coach me if you want.
Yeah. Well, I'll start with the question, and then maybe there'll be an opportunity for the coaching. But first of all, we have, you know, probably 10,000 years of momentum behind those beliefs. So it's like, imagine a fist being closed for 10,000 years as tight as you can. And then you start going in the opposite direction. Oh, instead of restricting myself by believing these thoughts, I'm going to go in the opposite direction. What that feels like resistance.
Yeah.
But it's actually the release of a previously held resistance that we're feeling.
Yeah.
And it just feels so foreign and different. It's like, oh, it feels hard. It feels new. Can I really let that go? And like that, I feel like especially our generation is really taking that on. Yeah. Remind me of the exact question.
It's really the balance between the isness of life, like the beingness, right? Like, can we identified that, and okay, but I have these desires.
Yeah.
Right?
So, and this is what I found too in my darkest dark. It's like, if I can be okay here, if I can find contentment here, I could find it anywhere. And I think we all have those moments where we feel like we lose everything just to find that we didn't need them in the first place. Yeah. And there's a type of liberation and freedom there. Why? Because we are able to be with what is. And that was 10 times more valuable than the vision I needed to acquire or the things, the achievement, because now I actually feel a sense of peace because I can be with the thing I've tried to avoid my entire life.
Yeah.
So that being our definition of success, I can be with what is. I can actually be with this. This is okay. If we move from that place, then all desires are just serving that state of being. Okay, I'm already with this. And from this place, this wants to happen, and it would take resistance for me not to do it. So it's not even like I'm necessarily doing it. It's like this has its own agenda. We could say on behalf of a life itself. People call that God's will. Yeah. That's here, and it's bringing me to life, and I can't find a reason not to do it. Yeah. So once all those reasons, we can't find them anymore, we'll just do the thing for its own sake, and it's complete unto of itself. Yes. So unless I'm coming from that place, I'm coming from desperation. When I'm coming from that place, I'm coming from inspiration. So the success in stillness is I can be with what is. In action is I can extend inspiration and that which grows from the contentment, which are things like inspiration, passion, joy, excitement. And when I extend that, that's the destination. Is the act itself, because it's self-fulfilling. It's self-perpetuating. Excitement, inspiration begets more excitement, inspiration. Yeah. It's a complete system.
like, just like, you just had a big meal, I'm like, that was a big meal for my soul, man. That was beautiful, man. That was good. That was like a good bite of cake.
Love me some cake.
Yeah, man. That was really, really beautiful the way you described that. Even the idea of success is just like, can you be with what is? And
because this is the thing, we go, once I step on that stage and deliver that TED Talk or whatever it is, then I'm going to be successful. And if we break that down, we slow down, you see yourself on the stage, you step off the stage, you tell a story right after you get off stage. Now I'm successful. Now I'm going to stop trying to be successful. And what's on the other side of that? I'm going to accept reality exactly as it is.
Yeah.
So was it the stage that gave you the feeling of success? Or was it the story you told that gave you permission to just accept what is as it is?
Yeah.
It's the story you told. So why not skip needing the stage and just tell the story now that allows you to accept what is?
Yeah.
And paradoxically, you're 10 times more likely to be invited to stages because most people aren't operating from that place.
Yes.
They're operating to get something, to get somewhere versus to come from somewhere.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. There was a moment in my life. Have you ever bombed on stage?
It's funny. I don't know.
I
don't think so.
So I bombed.
I've always been a natural, like on stages. I've always been. It started in high school. I just been comfortable on stages. I've definitely had some like embarrassing moments. The worst, I bombed at a wedding.
Okay.
Post-wedding, actually, I officiated.
Okay.
And then the next day, I did a toast, and I just froze. I didn't know what to say. And for like 45 seconds was just silent. And then said something. Oh, it was so I did have that moment.
Okay, you did. Okay, because I've had that moment where it's like everything goes white and you're like, what? Like almost, I remember I was giving a speech. I was in graduate school and I was giving a speech to like the kind of the first quarter, folks that had come in, and I just sort of took it upon myself because I knew I wanted to speak and be up there and all this stuff. And I was like, giving some really good insights and all these, how to be successful at this type of school, what to do. And I made this joke about the professor that was in the room. He thought it was funny, but for whatever reason, I like instantly had this thought of like, what if he was offended by that, And then it was like, and it just went white. And I remember like that sensation of kind of handing it back. I was doing really well, and then I handed it off early, and everybody was like, kind of like, what the fuck was that? That was really awkward. And I remember thinking like, man, that was like so bad. I was like super embarrassed by that. But then like later, I kind of got to this point because I knew I wanted to speak. I love speaking on stages, that I just sort of got okay with like, okay, well, if I bomb, I bomb. Like it's just like, it's great. I got to that point of acceptance, and I've been able to really honestly, like, you could just throw me up in front of a group of people and I can wing it. Yeah. And it's fun.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
well, that's the key, what you just said.
Yeah.
The best public speakers are completely okay being a shit show on stage.
Yeah.
The best basketball players are okay missing.
Yeah.
I think it was Michael Jordan holds the record for most, I don't know if anymore, but at one point, most shots made and missed.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And Babe Ruth, most strikeouts for a while, and kind of the same thing. It's the acceptance of striking out, right? Of allowing yourself to, all right, I'm willing to miss this shot. Yeah. And can I be okay with who I am in that?
Absolutely.
And yeah, that's really beautiful, man. Is there anything else that you feel called to in these days?
Just this thought just popped up as facilitators, coaches, and there's probably going to be some watching this.
Yeah.
One thing I learned as well is there's kind of these levels of facilitating. And I remember early in my facilitation days, it was, my job is to solve your problems. Stage 1.
Yeah.
And then stage 2 was, okay, my job is to realize your problems at some point are probably also mine. There's not necessarily a difference between you and I.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of resolving my own, even if if they're currently resolved, it's a past version of myself.
Yeah.
Right. And this is a mirror, right? Yeah. So it's a little more intimate. Layer 3 is, I'm not resolving your problems. I'm helping you dissolve them, which is another way of saying to question if the problem's actually a problem. Like, for example, I'm not successful because I haven't made a certain amount of money. Yeah. Stage 1 coach would be like, I'm going to teach you how to make money to solve that problem, which reinforces lack. Right? Oh yeah, you're right. You aren't successful. Let me show you how to be successful. That creates time. That creates you here and a destination that's promising something better than here.
Yes.
And that gap is suffering.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, how long is that going to, it's going to be forever. Here's the thing. If I put it in the future, it stays in the future.
Yeah.
My success in the future, it stays there forever.
Yeah.
And future is just a made up fantasy. So we can't ever experience it because it's made up. Yeah. And then there's the dissolving of problems. Let's question if there's a problem to actually solve.
Yeah.
Right? And that points us to acceptance. And so this has been a big revelation for me as well, just through this whole journey, is my job is to accept my clients as they are. And again, that's my job for me.
Yeah.
For reality. It's all one thing.
Yeah.
And in doing that, I realize where I can't accept them is an opportunity for me to forgive myself out loud in front of them, whether it's verbally or not.
Yeah.
So really, I'm just in this process, I think we're all in this process of needing, kind of depending on each other for reflection.
Yeah.
To see what we cannot see.
Yeah.
But also the interdependence or the independent part is, what am I going to do with it?
Yes.
And what I always notice is, especially with my clients, my partner, my business, whatever, when I shift, they shift. If I try to get them to shift, I've lost it. You know, I try to get them to change. I try to change the circumstance to then feel a certain way. I've lost it. But when that's reversed, I'm going to change my perception in order to come into acceptance now. Circumstance changes, partner, client, it all changes. So it just kind of points back to this principle of, the circumstances aren't informing my state of being. My state of being are informing my circumstances.
So as the coach, let me reiterate so I understand. You are looking at the client and saying, I see the wholeness of you, and I accept the wholeness of you, and I see myself in you.
Yeah.
And I'm just here as a mirror.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, I can't, who said this? They were referring to Jesus, and they said, Jesus believed more in your wholeness than you believed in your disease. So it's kind of like, it's like, I'm bad. And if I can't believe that about them, I can't believe it. There's no way. I'm already representing the state of acceptance that they're wanting to experience. And because at the core of it, if we go back to physics, every thought, emotion, experience has some sort of vibration, frequency that can be measured. It's not woo. It's the actual how things are. Yeah. So if I'm representing that state of coherence, that state of acceptance, my brain is organized in a certain way. You have mirror neurons. You're electromagnetic. You're conductive. We're like resonating. What are those called? The
tuning forks.
Tuning forks. We're like tuning forks. Yeah. So if I'm tuned into that, because I can't believe what you're believing about yourself. Number one, I'm reinforcing what's true about me. I'm reinforcing that I can't be that either.
Yes.
So what I help you, quote unquote, heal, I'll use that colloquially, what I help you heal, I reinforce is true in myself, number one. Number two, my only job is to see the truth.
Yeah.
And so if I agree with you, and the thing that's sneaky is some people, you don't even know if you're agreeing, because the person's question might be based on assumptions that aren't true, that you believe is true, that makes the question valid, versus questioning the assumptions that informed the question. It's like, well, because I'm just this body, and this is a finite universe, and how do I get all the resources possible? And then you coach on the question, and you don't get to a fundamental shift in their identity, because you're also believing that you're that identity, or you're taking on those same set of beliefs. So it's like, anytime there's resistance, and sometimes there's not, that's the sneaky part. It's just an assumption that you're so used to.
Yes.
But anytime there's resistance, then you know that your work for them is the best thing you could do for them is to question and process that resistance within yourself. That's literally all they need from you. It's like, man, I'm I did this thing to my partner, and if you feel that was bad, that they shouldn't have done that, and they're wrong for that, that they're pointing you to your work.
Yes.
And the more humble you are, the more effective you're going to be as a coach in that moment, because you're going, oh man, you're showing me where I need to do this work.
Yes.
And that might mean you actually stop and need to go do that work.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm actually triggered. That actually pisses me off.
Yeah.
I need to go figure that out, because I don't want to project that on you.
Yes. Yeah. And I've learned that as a coach. When I would have a retreat, I would feel the guys before the event, and I'd be like, I need to go have a drink right now. And I'm like, what the fuck? That's not my, like, cause I don't drink that much anymore. I'm like, why do I want to go be an alcoholic right now? Like, it was such a weird sensation. I remember that I was driving and I like had that thought. I'm like, that's so weird. But I was like resonating with where the guys were at.
100%.
And I needed to sit with the idea that it's okay.
Yes,
right?
exactly. That's exactly right.
That I wasn't, and it just so happened that one of the guys was an alcoholic. He was coming through and he had a lot of shame around that. And so it becomes resonant, right? And I've done enough work within myself that I recognize that, like, yes, that absolutely is the gig. And I see one of the things that, and this is really interesting, my personal edge is in wanting the man on the other side of my, I guess in my container to get that result.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like, that's my, my.
And here's a question.
Yeah.
When you want them to, and they're not, who do you become towards them?
Yeah. Then it becomes, I don't want to say more forceful, but like it's always
drill sergeant comes out.
it's all the drill sergeant, it's like, all right, let's get in this ice,
Yeah.
And in a way, like, and I really appreciated your coaching when we did that exercise, that integration exercise. I carry a big stick. I just do. It's just like in me that I carry this like vibration. And one of my clients was like, man, you're like this Viking that like is also at the rave that wants to hug everybody. And I'm like,
nice.
yeah, it's kind of like my style, man. It's like, that's totally what I do. And I love it. It's like, that's just like my vibe. I just like really love bringing both this warrior energy, but also like this deep, like this, like the depth of compassion. Like I want to be that.
Yeah.
But I want to meet your pain with this like warrior, like, and when I say warrior energy, I don't mean like let's go out and like take on, like, blow up the White House, right? It's like can we have the courage to feel and to witness this hurt, this shame, and this grief, and so my edge again is I'm coming out with this new, I guess I could say it, I'll just say it, coming out with this new program. I'm like really excited about it, and it's called The Brotherhood. So it's great.
And watch documentaries.
Right.
In your friend's mom's basement.
Friend's mom's basement, right? It won't be a Gaelic, but it's it's very simple, very straightforward. But it's designed to go and kind of deep dive into the main elements of life, right? Your health, your relationships, business, all these things, and then just meet yourself in the mental emotional mastery of those areas. Of course, like having goals and goal setting and these things is very important. Just like having a direction, like, to steer the ship kind of thing. But ultimately it's, it's all that. And for me, I fucking know I can change anyone's life if they're in front of me. For whatever reason with the online, I'm like learning, I'm like, okay, this is life changing. And I have to like continually like sit with that, but I also have to sit with, and from hearing your style is like, I have to be okay with these guys not getting anything out of this.
Absolutely. That's the code right there. It's like the moment I think my job is to help them resolve anything.
Yes.
I'm out of it.
Yeah.
Because, and how I'm defining help is that I have some control or responsibility that can actually determine whether they heal or not. It's actually going to, I can't. All I can do is be in that healed state.
Yes.
And when I say healed, it's not like I've healed everything.
Like a whole state.
Yeah, but we know what it's like. Like if you're excited and truly passionate about what you do, which I know you are because I could feel it, then when you act on it, you are exclaiming authenticity. Yes. That is healing. Yeah. Your brain, the gamma frequency in your brain, which is the state that deep meditators, it's also the channeling state, like the channels, they'll put electrodes up, and it's the most coherent your brain can be. Your memory, your recall, everything is heightened. And you anti-age, your telomeres lengthen, We're literally designed biologically. We get rewarded for living in passion and inspiration and excitement. And it's that feeling of, like in this interview, when time passes and you don't notice the passage of time.
Yeah.
So all of those qualities together, intense focus, excitement, passion, it's putting you in a state that is healing. You're actually regenerative. Your body is regenerating. And you have an electromagnetic field that is going to be emanating that state of being. And it's non-local.
Yeah.
So whether you're on Zoom or in person, as long as that's where you're coming from, and there's going to be times where you're not, that's okay too. It's just like, let me learn from that and respond to it the best way I can. But when I show up in that, it's all I can do.
Yeah.
The rest is up to them. It's like, it's not even, this isn't philosophy. It's like, I actually can't do anything more than that. I can't change your mind. I can't have you accept or reject what I'm saying. That's up to you.
Yeah.
But if they're open-minded and they're willing, that's all you need.
This was the best coaching session I've had in a long time. This has been amazing. It's kind of like everything you're describing is everything I needed.
Perfect. Synchronicity.
Yeah, man. There are no accidents. Actually, I found you. It's really funny. My VA was like, you should just like, raise your Facebook following more. I was like, yeah, but it's Facebook's like for friend, for family and like, your ex-girlfriend from like college. You still stalk every once in a while. And for whatever reason, it was like suggested. And it was like, you were like first on my suggested list. I was like, all right, I'll just like follow her advice. And I like literally clicked on it. And was like, hey man, do you want to be on my podcast?
Dope. Love it.
There are no accidents, as they say, man.
Follow the synchronicity.
It follows synchronicities, which is amazing. We got a tiny bit more time.
Okay.
And I'm really curious because the moment we're recording this, there is a lot of upheaval in the world relative to Israel-Palestine. And this is a total like right turn, but it just kind of came on my heart that I wanted to kind of sit with this because you're talking a lot about acceptance. And I understand, and I have a certain perspective. As a veteran, I was raised Jewish, like did the bar mitzvah thing, did all this stuff. And I have a certain perspective. But I also don't agree personally. I don't agree that any one side is right and any one side is wrong. Yeah. And so, I'm curious with your philosophy, both with, the singularity, but also with the depth of acceptance and integration. What's your take?
That's really good.
Yeah.
Glad you brought it up.
Yeah.
So acceptance doesn't mean passivity. Doesn't mean be a pacifist. Acceptance means I'm going to question what's in the way or what is causing my psychological suffering, which is where my mind goes into past and future that causes me to suffer.
Yeah.
When I'm in a state of acceptance, I'm just in the absence of suffering.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean I don't feel a genuine call to action. Now, if I'm suffering and I don't inquire and I'm coming from suffering by definition is disempowering. You don't feel connected to power. That's why you start to feel angry. When you're suffering and there's something, you feel like you can't do something about something, and there's fear present and all the things that the mind will conjure up, then that initial call to action, which is your soul's way of saying, this isn't true, and I know what's true. Everyone knows what's true. Yeah. This isn't true. I need to do something about this. Everyone has that call. You see a baby on the side of the road being beaten, everyone's outraged. You see an animal. They represent innocence, right? You see it being it's a violation of truth. Yes. Because you have to be buying into a lie, a series of lies to think that's okay. Yeah. You have to be suffering. Yeah. And all suffering, like we figured out here, is based in illusion. So to believe it is true and justified is to violate what's actually true. Let's start with that. Okay. And when I see that in the world, my natural response of a sane human being, which is a human that's not believing all of ego, will have some sort of call to action. If I'm in disempowerment, the call to action gets filtered through a negative belief system and is distorted as anger, which means I want to do something about this, but I feel powerless. So I'm using anger to try to gain power. A call to action says I can do something about this. I can decide if I'm going to suffer over this. And because I know that and I live it, I feel empowered. And there's some unique response that only I have. And it could be poetry. It could be going there and fighting for what you believe in. It doesn't matter what the choice is, because the choice is informed by truth, and it's spontaneous. Truth is manifests spontaneously.
Yeah.
So if everyone, just imagine this, if everyone met the suffering that this evoked, which is all their own repressed emotion, believe it or not, no one's upset about the war.
Yeah.
When I say upset, I mean they're not suffering because of the war. They're suffering because of programming that's been repressed and unconscious, that goes back generations.
Yeah.
You know, their childhood trauma, the feelings of hopelessness, powerlessness, the feelings of injustice. None of this is new.
Yes.
This is old stuff.
Yeah.
So this is a mirror. It's evoking that repression. We're in for the most part, kindergarten level emotional intelligence on the planet.
Yeah.
What do I do with this repression? I don't know. I'm going to do what I've learned, which is to project it or deny it,
Yeah.
or bypass it. That's a majority of people. But if I can actually process through it, it will lead me to a clear, empowered, connected version of myself.
Yes.
That by which any response I have is going to be based in truth. And if everyone does that, everyone has a unique contribution. There could be mental and emotional contributions. There could be people with resources and they send resources. That's their unique contribution.
Yeah.
There could be people that are on the ground, that it's just simply putting people in homes, and who knows what it is.
Yeah.
But that organizing principle, here we go again, of the truth, of love moving through them, has to move in the direction of integration and togetherness. So whatever it is, you can't codify it, and I can't project it forward and go, this is what needs to happen. No one knows what the appropriate future response will be, because we're not living in it yet. We can't know until we experience it. So people say give it to God. They don't know what that means. It's like giving it to God is resolving the suffering that then puts you in a place that gives you access to your unique response. And that's all you can do.
Yeah.
But when you do it, you give other people permission to do it. And if everyone responded to this circumstance in a way we've never responded to before, then we will transmute the circumstance.
Yeah, then it flips, because
it becomes a unifying event instead of an event that divides.
Yeah.
Then it becomes irrelevant.
Yeah.
The repetition of it becomes irrelevant. We don't need it again, because the only reason it's there was because of the lack of this felt sense of unity and togetherness and love.
Yes.
So if we respond in kind, in that new energy, then we will create, it's like new soil in which that can't grow anymore.
Yeah.
We're in a completely new experience.
Yeah.
So equal and opposite result. Yeah, it's really intense and it's unjust and it's not true. It's a violation of truth. Holds the seed of what's true. And if we answer that call collectively, we pass the test.
You know, it's really, and I really enjoyed your take on that, because whether we, you know, like, I don't want to go conspiracy theory and say that there's some, like, you know, elitist dark entities like running the show and like behind the scenes, like Wag the Dog movie or something like that.
There probably is, but
there probably is, but I don't want to get into that. But what you're describing, still, regardless of that being true, whether it is true or not, still is the antidote.
Absolutely. It doesn't matter what's happening in the world. That's when that sets in, it doesn't matter. Yeah. Because only my response matters. Yes. And what how I respond determines the world I vote for.
Yes. Yeah, I 100% agree. I was even in thinking about it, it appeared like if I had to, you know, I don't want to diagnose you, but like I could see you living on purpose. Like even just going through your Instagram and like kind of getting to know you, like before we sat down for conversation, it's like I see you living on purpose with your, I call it your soul print, right? It's like your thumbprint of how you show up in the world. And I felt called in that same sense, you know, to get into men's work. You know, when the whole toxic masculinity thing came out, I was like, no, fuck that. Yeah. Like, you know, there was my anger. Nice. And then and then it was like, let's fucking go. Yeah. And I was like, I will show you a great man. And then I, you know, coming to find out, like I was just looking for myself in that, you know, here I am. And what you're describing is in essence that it's maybe this is a call to action for others to treat their relationships more, you know, with more peace and more grace and more compassion.
Absolutely. It's like, where am I at war with myself, with others? How can I promote peace over there if I'm not living it here? Let me take care of that first.
Oh, that's so good. It always comes back. always comes back to the self. You have articulated some points that very eloquently. I want to commend you for that, man. It's been amazing to sit down and chat with you.
Likewise.
And how can people find you, man?
Instagram is my main thing.
Okay.
My website, brandonbozarth.com.
Okay.
But I'm most active. Most of my content goes out on Instagram.
Yeah, beautiful. And what are your offerings?
So right now I'm doing a beta course. Probably by the time this comes out, it'll already be full because the deadline's very soon.
Yeah.
Where I'm back to the GNM topic.
Beautiful.
GNM it's kind of like astrology or human design in the sense that it's a map.
Okay.
You can look at your symptoms and you can trace it back to conflicts in the psyche.
Okay.
And it's just another access point to inquiry. So that's where I've been playing with, now, because it also just the learning of GNM will resolve conflicts of fear. What is cancer in this? And there's so much resolution just in the education alone. I find it's just incredibly life-changing. So I'm doing a beta course because I'm not a trained professional in GNM. I'm teaching what I've learned and how I've resolved some of my own conflicts and my process of self-healing. And how ISI, integrated self-inquiry, has been the main piece to that.
Yes.
So I'm doing a beta course where I'm bringing those two worlds together.
Yeah.
It's exciting. And beyond that, my primary body of work is called the 13. It's 13 different dimensions of life, beginning with God, similar to Jesus and the 12 apostles, 12 around the one.
Yeah.
So all 12 are just entry points, little cockroach down there.
Oh, perfect. We're in Austin, Texas.
Yeah, classic. Let me know if he's going to crawl on me. As an entry point, all the 12 are entry points back to the one, but in very practical ways. It's like, again, journey to God, journey in God, like we talked about. So that's my main body of work. We've done 3 years of different rounds of that, leading to retreats. And then starting in the beginning of the pandemic, I put it on hold.
Yeah.
And a really challenging relationship and health stuff, I put everything on hold. So I'm in this place now of last 6 months, just coming back out of my cocoon, where I was like, I need rest.
Perfect. And
this course is part of that. And then probably starting next year, that we'll bring the 13 back, and we'll start to bring different retreats back. And I just did a workshop at Kuya the other day, and I just reminded myself how much I love in-person work. So if you're watching, just look out for whenever that comes back, but it'll probably be in the beginning of the year.
Incredible. And I want to jump in on that beta program.
Yeah.
I know my wife and I would definitely, because of the Lyme and the mold.
I just spoke to a woman last night that's dealing with Lyme, same protocol, all these antibiotics, killing all the candida. I'm like, the candida is your friends.
Yeah.
They're your friends. They're eating up all of the excess cells. Yeah. And by killing them, you're delaying the healing process.
Oh man. And it's if anybody's listening, they have Lyme's disease, it's like, my heart goes out to you, because it takes a while, to come from that. And so it's powerful. So any last words you want to share?
I also mentioned I do one-on-one work.
Okay.
And private sessions as well. So all that's on my website.
Perfect.
And in terms of last words, I'm just really grateful. This was such a fun conversation. I felt total flow with us. It was great. Again, want to honor your courage and vulnerability. I think a lot of people will take a lot from that. Yeah. And I would love to do this again sometime.
Yeah, we definitely will. We'll definitely sit down. I have a few on my list that I like to call back, and you're on that list now. So It's beautiful, man. So awesome, guys. Well, I appreciate you guys listening, and enjoy the episode. We'll see you next week.